Thanks. That should be better.
Okay, let's try this again. Check video's working.
Yep. Seems like it's all working on my end, Jeremy.
Good, yeah. So if you'll just make me the host again, that would be great.
Hey, Jeremy or admin, it looks like we need to promote Lynn. She's connected as an attendee, but we need to promote her as a panelist to sit on the committee. Oh, perfect. There we go. Or, yep. Jeremy, it might be good just to give 1 or 2 extra minutes since this is a little bit of a new format with links, just to make sure everyone's going to connect all right.
Okay, we'll do that.
Jeremy, are you getting some background fuzz noise on your end, or is that just my hearing that? It almost sounds like running water.
No, it sounds okay on my end.
Okay, maybe that's just my speaker.
I hear a little bit of that, Aaron.
It looks like we have most folks here, so.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started then? I'll call the meeting to order. This is the November meeting of the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. My name is Jeremy Keene. I'll be chairing the meeting today. This is a virtual meeting. We're hosting this on a Zoom webinar. If you wish to make public comment, please use the raised lower hand feature on your web browser. Our host will allow you to talk, and you'll need to unmute your mic. If you've joined us by phone today, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 and mute and unmute using *6. If you're participating by phone, I'll call on you by reading the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you're participating by computer, I'll call the name that was listed when you entered our webinar. Let's start our agenda today with roll call. Soraya, will you help me with that?
Sure. Shane Stack is absent. Sarah Caulfield.
Ben Schmidt for Sarah Cofield.
Thank you. Corey Aldridge.
I'm present.
Dory Brownlow.
Present.
Ellen Bucknan. Absent. Don Barrow. Absent. Jacqueline Smith.
Present.
Chet Krauser.
Karen Hughes for Chet Krauser.
Juniper Davis. Absent. Donna Cougler.
Grant Carlton for Donna Gockler.
Ryan Hammond.
I'm here. Thank you.
Len Helgard.
Present.
Jeremy Keene.
Present.
Ben Weiss.
Present.
Stephanie Brander. Absent. Brian Hillstad. Absent. Bynum Jackson. Absent.
This is Karen Hughes. Juniper Davis is in the meeting, but she is having technical difficulties, so she's having problems unmuting.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Vicky Cernich. I'm proxy for Katie Potts.
Okay, any others on roll call? Thank you, Soraya. Appreciate that. Any public comment on items that are not on the agenda today? Seeing none, and sorry, I skipped over item number 2 on our agenda. We have approval of minutes from our October 5th TTAC meeting. Any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will stand approved. And we'll move on to our new business. We have 4 items on the agenda today. We're going to try to get through all these today. We have until 11:30. If for some reason we run out of time, we will postpone the 4th item on the agenda, the pavement condition assessment. But I'm hopeful we'll be able to do all 4 today. So the first item of agenda is review and approval of amendment number 5 to the 2016 Long Range Transportation Plan. John Sand.
Thanks, Jeremy. Can you guys see that screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. Apologies for not having my camera on. I just tried to turn it on when the meeting started and it crashed my computer, so I'm not going to risk that right now again. Anyway, my name's John. I'm here with the MPO to present a proposed amendment to the 2016 LRTP Long Range Transportation Plan. So this amendment is regarding the intersection of Mary Jane and Broadway. MDT, Missoula City and County have been collaborating as part of the build grant to complete this intersection safety improvement project. Initially, MDT, the city and county had agreed to work towards building a roundabout there, which would have included transfer of HSIP funds, which is Highway Safety Improvement funding directly to the build project. This was prohibited. So now looking at schedules, it looks like if a signal is going to be installed in conjunction with the build grant, a few steps need to be taken immediately, and that includes this proposed, excuse me, that should be project number, or no, that is project 15. So it'd be recategorizing this intersection safety project, which is project 15 and the LRTP, from illustrative projects to committed projects. So that's a little background on the project. The scope includes an installation of a signal at the future intersection of Mary Jane and Broadway, which you can see on that map just southwest of the workforce housing. This project would also reconfigure the existing Broadway and Flynn Lane intersection to eliminate the left-hand turn from Flynn Lane to westbound Broadway. Providing this intersection would effectively reduce traffic on Flynn Lane, which would reclassify it as a local street. The project costs are down below the map there, $589,000 for construction, 88,000, excuse me, 88,000 and 12,000 for IC. Here is a zoomed in area of the location. So you can see the new VA Center will be located in this area, and that's another reason why getting the signal in sooner rather than later will have a greater impact. The orange dot there is where Flynn Lane reconfiguration would happen, eliminating that left-hand turn. And once improvements are made to South Mary Jane here, then at Mullen, then Mary Jane would be the collector through that area. And as I said, reclassifying Flynn to a local street. This is the amendment reflected in the Appendix B of the LRTP. So you can see the bottom of the committed projects there. Project 15 would be moved up to committed from recommended or illustrative projects. So staff recommendation is approve Amendment 5 to the 2000 LRTP as approved, and so I'll open it up for discussion.
John, I just have one clarification on the memo. The dollar amounts on this, the total estimated project costs are $10,000 for PE, $677,965 for CN, including CE, and $12,791 for IC. I just want to clarify that. I believe your slide had different numbers.
Yeah, you are right. So the numbers I received from the project team are slightly different from what MDT provided. They're relatively close, but that is something that we will need to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, comments, questions from the committee? This is an action item, so I believe we do need a motion to recommend or not recommend approval of this amendment. Ben Weiss.
Thanks. I understand not being able to give HSIP money to the build grant, but I don't understand why that translates into moving from a roundabout to a signal, especially when we know that signals are so much more dangerous than roundabouts. I'm really concerned that putting a signal on a 55-mile-an-hour road will lead to intense crashes over time. And so I'd like to see this be a roundabout still, even if it can't be part of the build grant.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'd like to speak to that since I've been pretty involved with this process. So as you all might remember, we received a $13 million build grant for a project that is about a $40 million total project. So we're working incrementally to build the project. We don't have enough money to do everything. The roundabout option was our preferred option. We do believe that a roundabout does provide a lot of safety benefits. But at this point in time, we don't have enough money to build a roundabout there. The roundabout at Broadway and Mary Jane was close to $2 million. MDT really worked hard with us to advance their HSIP project to make that money available sooner. But there's not enough money to build that roundabout. And so the decision we've made is to go forward with a signal. It doesn't preclude building a roundabout at some point in the future. And the signal will operate well, and we believe it'll be a safety improvement over having no intersection control at that intersection. So our recommendation is to go forward with a signal at this point, and it'll allow us to get those improvements on the ground sooner. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Ben.
Thanks, Jeremy. That makes sense, and I'm glad to get that on the record. Was there discussion of like if we waited an extra year, would more HSIP be available? Because it seems like the cost benefit which HSIP runs on would especially if you go over time, the signal is, might be, there might be more benefit to a roundabout. I mean, we know that that's statistically going to reduce the severity of crashes and things.
Yeah, I can't speak to the availability of more money. I do know that MDT moved mountains to get us the money that they were able in the more current time frame. Aaron?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out too, or remind that there's some, I don't know if urgency is the right word, but some time sensitivity with this project too, with the opening of the VA this late summer or fall, and trying to get this intersection work done so that can be a safe intersection for access to the VA when that facility opens, because we're expecting that to generate a fair amount of traffic coming in and out, and same with some of the other developments that are happening sort of that north end of Mary Jane Boulevard. So there is a need to get this project completed relatively quickly, rather than leaving it as an uncontrolled intersection for a certain amount of time.
I've got Jacqueline.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I agree with both Jeremy and Aaron, what they've stated so far. And Ben, to directly answer your question, if HSIP funds would be available if we waited a year or two, and the likelihood of that is very low.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. Any public comment on this? I'm also not seeing any public comment. I guess we're looking for a motion. Jacqueline?
Jeremy, this is Dory. I'll approve amendment number 5 to the 2016 LRTP as proposed.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. And I believe I need a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Seconded by Karen Hughes. Okay, seeing no further discussion, let's do a roll call vote, I guess. Is that how we're doing this, Soraya?
I think, or Jeremy, the other way we've done it on these is to do kind of a voice vote if there are any opposed. And if there is none opposed, then we can assume that the motion passes. Okay,
thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Being on Zoom is a little more difficult to do voice votes. Any opposition to the motion to recommend approval of amendment number 5? Okay, seeing none, that recommendation is approved.
I think you probably need to ask for approval, a voice vote for approval, and then opposition, just to be technically correct.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Okay, we'll do that again. So let's do a voice vote. All those in favor of the recommended motion to approve amendment number 5?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. Apologize for my my unfamiliarity with Robert's rules here, but
that's all right. Now you're ready to run for city council.
Not anytime soon.
I suspected that was the case.
Okay, so that is item number 1. And now we'll go back to our agenda. Item number 2 on our agenda is to review and approval of amendment number 2 to the 2020-2024 Transportation Improvement Program. John Sandigan.
I'm back. Thank you. So this is what we just approved for the LRTP, was moving the this safety project to the committed list. And another administrative thing we need to take care of is including it in the transportation improvement program. So this is the exact same project we just discussed. The amendment here is including it into the HSIP table, which is part of the transportation improvement program, which this document was included in your memo packet. But here's a screenshot of the project highlighted in red with those costs. And you can see the other safety projects that are included in here right now, but we are asking for approval of amending amendment number 2 to the tip to include the Broadway and Mary Jane project into the HSIP table.
Okay, so we are looking for a motion to approve amendment number 2.
Hi, this is Vicky. I motion to approve amendment number 2.
Thanks, Vicky.
This is Ellen, I'll second.
Thank you, Ellen. Any comment or discussion on the motion? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve amendment number 2, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3 on our agenda is a presentation and review of the draft preferred alternative for the East Broadway Highway 200 corridor plan. Aaron Wilson and Kate Dinsmore.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I'll just do a really quick intro and then hand it over to Kate, who can walk us through where we're at in this project. But just as a reminder, we've been working on the East Missoula Highway 200 corridor plan for, gosh, it feels like almost a year now, but it really got kicked off earlier this year in February with some public outreach. We drafted a number of alternatives that we took out for public comment and got a lot of review and comment back over the summer. And so now we're kind of moving into the home stretch on this project where we want to get the preferred alternative locked in and start working on the final report and some recommendations and potential funding options and those elements of this plan. And so with the goal of having this wrapped up sort of end of year, early next year, and ready to get working on identifying that funding. So we're in sort of the last round of public involvement or public comment on the design elements of this project. We'll have a little bit more when we put the final plan out for comment, but this is what we're hoping to move forward with. And so I'll turn it over to Kate Dinsmore, who's been leading this project for WGM Group, and let her walk you through sort of where we're at.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Aaron. All right, so as Aaron was just saying, we're at that point in the process where we've put together the preferred alternative. We presented this to the public a couple of weeks ago, so we've got another week of the public comment period, but thus far we've gotten pretty much all positive feedback on it, so we're pretty excited about that. So the corridor includes the area between Van Buren on the west end and extends through East Missoula over to Tamarack on the east end. And we divided it into 3 segments because of their unique characteristics. So we've got East Broadway from Van Buren to the I-90 interstate interchanges, and then the East Missoula segment, and then on the east end, Sha-Ron to Marshall. So as Aaron mentioned, we've been working on this over a year now, and we started, or basically this plan was conceived out of the need to address safety issues. So we started by establishing an understanding of the issues within the corridor. Looking back on our process, the first open house was in February. We asked the public to tell us about the corridor and their concerns. And then we took those comments and did some of our own research and came up with 3 corridor-wide alternatives and detailed options for 4 focus areas that were identified as specific areas of concern. And then we did a second open house in July, and we presented those options and asked for comments. We also posted surveys on the project website to create a better understanding of the preferences for the design options. And so I'm going to go through kind of the results of those public comments and then how that led to the preferred alternative. So we had over 1,200 social pinpoint visits, and social pinpoint is just the platform that we used for gathering comments online. There were 275 unique users, and we had 196 survey responses and comments. So the first question we asked was for a preference of the alternatives. There were 3 different alternatives: complete streets, shared use path, and sidewalks and parking. And there was a pretty strong preference for the shared use path option, which I will kind of give you a quick glimpse of to remind you what that was. Basically, that included a shared use path from Van Buren to Easy Street and a shared use path along the base of Mount Jumbo connecting downtown to East Missoula. The comments we got were that people liked the safety aspect of it, with the path having that separation from vehicles. They liked having a continuous path the entire length of the corridor. This included a trail along the base of Mount Jumbo, which people generally liked. They also liked having boulevards with landscaping. There was concern about not having a connection along 100, how this path kind of stops between Easy Street and Highton. Really wanted to still have that kind of connectivity. And then there's also some concerns about maintenance. And then the first focus area was along Van Buren. So on that west end, trying to get a preference for what people wanted as far as bicycle and pedestrian amenities. Strong preference for a shared use path for bikes, and then also for pedestrians, but some people, there was some desire for a boulevard sidewalk there. And then the next focus area was at the I-90 interchanges and the railroad underpass. There were 3 options here. The first one was 2 roundabouts, so one at each of the eastbound and westbound I-90 interchanges, plus the improved railroad underpass. So that would be completely replacing that with a wider structure. The second option, which I'm showing, is the Mount Jumbo shared use path connection, which didn't include that connection from Easy Street to Highton Street, or changes to the railroad underpass there. And then the third option was 1 roundabout, and it would have just been that eastbound I-90 interchange, not the westbound, and also did not include any bike ped improvements. And so people generally really wanted to widen the underpass for the railroad. And I think this one, this was a little bit of a nuanced survey, or responses, I guess, because it wasn't quite as clear cut, because we didn't, not all the options included the railroad underpass. And I think if we would have added that to the other 2 options, we would have seen a different response on that. So, but I think what we gathered from this, really liked the railroad underpass, generally thought a need for a roundabout, particularly on the eastbound side, and then liked the Mount Jumbo option because it didn't move bikes through the roundabouts. And then East Missoula saw a preference for shared use path for bikes. We did get some comments on the raised cycle track that there were differing opinions about whether there was value and safety in a raised cycle track. And then as far as the pedestrian amenity, preferences for a shared use path or a boulevard sidewalk, and wanted parallel parking over angle parking or back in angle parking. And we also got a lot of comments, or several comments, about the need for on-street parking. And the need for on-street parking comes from how the right-of-way is currently used, there are several businesses in East Missoula that use the right-of-way for parking. And as these improvements are built, they will no longer have that space for parking. And so we want to provide an option to make sure that they have adequate parking. So we don't anticipate having on-street parking through the entire East Missoula area, but in areas where it's maybe needed as these improvements are built. And then the last focus area was at Sha-Ron, where we have an issue with a lot of people parking along the highway. And so we gave them two options here. The first was an on-street protected parking lane, which would be west of Sha-Ron. Basically just parallel parking along the street, but protected. And then an east parking lot just to it's about a quarter mile east of the Sha-Ron area, and then people would be able to walk back to that access point. People liked option 2 because it provided more parking and it gets the cars off the highway. Option 1 was popular because it was closer to that access point. They're concerned about people from the parking lot actually walking all the way back to the fishing access. And then the other thing they liked is that we had the option for a bus or shuttle pullout, and people thought that was a really great idea. I think this is a project that is currently being worked on, and so this is kind of its own separate thing at this point, but still including the recommendation, or still include a recommendation for that in our preferred alternative. So
Can I add
then,
something? I'm sorry, I had to duck out of the meeting and come back in, so I may have missed something. You mentioned a bus pullout. Is that not shown in that?
This option, we didn't, it was shown, it's not shown in this graphic. We are including it in the preferred alternative, and I'll go into that and how that works as I get to that part of it.
Okay.
All right, so after we got all the public comments, we met with our advisory committee to determine the preferred alternative. We had 2 meetings where we figured this out, and it began by evaluating and ranking the alternatives based on their ability to achieve the project goals. And those are improving safety, improving operation and addressing access management, expanding multimodal options, enhancing the unique character of each segment, being cost-effective, feasible, and maintainable, and protecting the environment from negative impacts. And then we also took into consideration public support. So this is the preferred alternative that was developed. It was decided that a mix of the alternatives was needed to respond to the unique character of each segment of the corridor, and no one alternative was the right solution. The committee agreed right away that bike ped facilities should be included for the entire length of the corridor, with a mix of shared use paths, on-street bike lanes, raised cycle tracks, and sidewalks. And one of the first and easiest decisions was to include a shared use path from Staple Street to Tamarack. There's a lot of discussion on the other segments, so I'm going to go into more details of those areas. But just looking at this overall preferred alternative, it includes a shared use path and on-street bike lanes from Van Buren to East Missoula with a new wider railroad bridge and eastbound I-90 interchange roundabout. And through East Missoula, a cycle tracks, sidewalks, and landscape boulevards are proposed. A new parking area is proposed just east of Sha-Ron, along with the shared use path connecting East Missoula to Tamarack. We also considered bus stops and crossings, as well as lighting through the corridor. The bus stops are shown on the map as small orange circles. Through East Missoula, the bus stops have shifted off Speedway onto Highway 200. And so there was more discussion on the other segments, so I'm going to zoom into the East Broadway segment. And I know there are several people on this or in this meeting who are on the advisory committee. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle in some of their comments as we go into more detail on this. But as we get to the end, if I missed anything that you guys felt was important, please add that to the discussion. All right. So for the East Broadway segment, there's a shared use path on the south side and an on-street bike lane provided from Van Buren to I-90. The shared use path provides a 2-way connection for users that only want to access locations on the south side of Highway 200. The advisory committee felt it was necessary to accommodate how people use the corridor. often beginning and ending their trip on the south side of the highway. This includes students living in apartments along the river and going to classes at the university. The on-street bike lanes cater to commuter bicyclists from East Missoula traveling into downtown for work. On-street parking is provided where existing right-of-way width allows, providing overflow parking for apartment complexes and events. That area is shown with the yellow highlight. And I think I can kind of in this area here. And that's an area that as this project progresses into past that planning level design, that'll need to be evaluated where that actually goes, but we want to make sure there's an option for on-street parking to help out with the multifamily in that area where there's typically overflow parking. Let's see, the committee chose to prioritize the eastbound on-street biking lane over on-street parking. So we're really only having that on-street parking where there is space within the existing right-of-way. Street crossings and bus stops are improved and will include lighting. We are not proposing continuous street lighting through the East Broadway segment, but instead focusing lighting for improved safety. Access management near Van Buren is addressed by extending the median to the east and eliminating the left turn lane at Van Buren for vehicles traveling west. This allows for better access control while creating space for improved bicycle and pedestrian amenities. And as properties redevelop, we'll look for opportunities for easements to better accommodate bike ped and boulevard facilities. We also discussed the potential for a river path and see the potential for both a river path and a shared use path along Highway 200 to be realized. If one of those moves forward, the other should be reevaluated while also taking into consideration the user groups for each path. And then this segment also includes the railroad bridge replaced with the wider structure and a roundabout added at the eastbound I-90 interchange. So the railroad bridge is replaced to accommodate on-street bike lanes and a shared use path. And while this is a large expense, it provides the best solution for connectivity and safety. Providing bike and pedestrian connectivity along Highway 200 was a priority based on the comments we received. People didn't want to see all of the improvements go in and still have this barrier between East Missoula and Missoula. And then the roundabout at the eastbound I-90 interchange improves safety and intersection operations while addressing the challenging geometry of the intersection. A roundabout at the westbound I-90 interchange is not included in the preferred alternative. However, if there's a need for a roundabout in the future, it can be accommodated. And then moving on to East Missoula. This area includes sidewalks, landscaped boulevards, raised cycle tracks, and curb and gutter on both sides of Highway 200. Continuous street lighting is provided from Highton Street to Staple Street. Bus stop and striped crossing improvements are planned for Highton Street, Randall Street, and Staple Street. With the street improvements, the entire 80-foot right-of-way will be utilized. This will affect parking for some businesses that currently use the right-of-way for parking. In these areas on street, parking can be accommodated by eliminating the landscape boulevards, and parallel parking was chosen because it leaves more space for multimodal facilities. Cycle tracks were chosen because a separated bike facility was preferred for protection. We also discussed a shared use path, but it was desirable to have equivalent improvements on both sides of the road, especially when considering future redevelopment along Highway 200. There was also considerable discussion on the transitions from cycle tracks to shared use paths. We looked at how that would happen in more detail and were advised to incorporate transit stops into those transitions and crossings. So looking at Highton Street, we're proposing a transition from a shared use path to a cycle track. So the two-way shared use path transitions to a one-way raised cycle tracks on the north-south of Highway 200 through East Missoula. This includes a bicycle and pedestrian crossing at Highton with a refuge island to allow pedestrians to stop before finishing crossing the street. And then bus stops are located at this intersection so users have access to the street crossing. So here's a rendering of the improvements through East Missoula, creating a new look for East Missoula, improving safety for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. This area lacks curb, gutter, and sidewalk, as well as having numerous approaches in large areas of continuously paved property abutting the road that results in nearly continual access with few restrictions in place. This causes safety and stormwater issues. To address these issues, curb and gutter will be installed along the entire length of Highway 200 through East Missoula. This will address stormwater and drainage issues and delineate access to businesses and residences, as well as street connections. Intersecting streets will be better aligned for more perpendicular street intersections. A two-way left turn lane is shown through most of East Missoula, which removes stopped or slow left turning vehicles from the through lanes and stores those vehicles in the meeting area until an acceptable gap in opposing traffic is available. And then additional driveway access is provided to existing businesses and residences. And then at Staple Street, we transition back from the cycle tracks to the shared use path on the north side of the highway. This includes a bicycle and pedestrian crossing, again with the refuge island, and we also place the bus stops in coordination with this crossing. And then moving to the east, there's a shared use path on the north side of the highway through the Sha-Ron Marshall segment connecting to the existing path at Tamarack. The path is located on the north side of the highway to provide better access to existing residences and to address construction feasibility issues where there is limited space between the river and hillside. Rectangular rapid flashing beacon is provided near Tamarack for users to cross Highway 200 and to the existing trail east of Tamarack. And then a new parking lot is provided east of the Sha-Ron fishing access with the trail connecting back to the river access. So the shared use path is on the north side. We are proposing a smaller trail to connect on the south side to connect the parking to Sha-Ron. There's between the proposed parking area and the river, there's another property owner between those two spots. And so I think ideally you would access directly from that parking area, but that's still being worked out. And then a bus stop, this also includes a bus pullout for shuttle service, and I'll show you a little more detail of that. So basically here's the bus pullout, and then that could serve both Mountain Line as well as a shuttle service for the tubers. The idea is to provide an air compressor at the bus pullout so people can ride out there with their deflated tubes and then inflate them once they get there. And then again, having that trail along the south side connecting to the parking to the east, and then also a crosswalk connecting to the trail on the north side of the highway. And then a little more detail on the Tamarack Crossing, including a striped crossing with the rectangular rapid flashing beacon so that to alert drivers, since this is faster in this area, and then also coordinating that with the bus stop locations. And then there were just a couple of other items that I wanted to bring up that were discussed with the advisory committee, and those include maintenance, particularly through the East Missoula segment, and then the need to work with MDT to get approval for these improvements. So we're going to include some strategies for addressing maintenance in the final plan document, and then as these improvements are implemented, maintenance will need to be addressed as well. So kind of next steps, basically we're waiting another week to finish getting public comments on that, and then we'll consider those public comments and see if we need to make any changes to the preferred alternative. We'll also be evaluating funding strategies and project phasing and implementation, and that'll go into the final plan document, which will be released for public comment. I think right now we're planning that to be early January. And then we'll have another comment period and put together the final report and go through the plan approval process. And that kind of finishes up my presentation on the preferred alternative. So I'm happy to take questions and comments.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Great presentation. Comments and questions from the committee? I'm not seeing any hands. I have a couple. On the East Broadway segment, it looks like you're recommending bike lanes and a shared use path. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there was quite a bit of discussion on this, and originally we had the shared use path on the south side and just a westbound bike lane, and then we decided to add in the eastbound bike lane as well. And it really came from trying to serve two different user groups. And we feel like there's the people that kind of live probably, or their destinations are both on the south side of Highway 200. And so having a way for them to, we didn't want them to have to cross and then cross back. And so we wanted that two-way shared use path for them. We see that use a lot currently in people using the sidewalk. And then also thinking about accommodating that commuter bicyclist that's coming from East Missoula or heading out past East Missoula, wanted to have an amenity for them as well.
Great, thanks. And if I heard you right, would that shared use path in some cases maybe pull off to and be a riverfront path instead of adjacent to the road?
So right now it's planned to with this project, we really tried to plan all the improvements within the right of way. And so right now it's all in the right of way, but I think we need to consider, we know there's the idea of having that riverfront path. And so as this plan progresses, I think trying to see which project moves forward first. I think we should take that in consideration, and whether we need both a riverfront path and a shared use path right on, on East Broadway, and trying to weigh that. And so for now, we're planning for the shared use path, but we kind of wait and see how things progress.
Yeah, and Jeremy, I would add too that to me is another reason to show, at least on these conceptual drawings, the bike lane and the shared use path, knowing that if that shared use path moves to riverfront, you'd probably want the bike lanes for that direct access or people who want to travel, and the visibility of the bicycle facilities through the corridor. I think there's a little bit of tension between, the recreational benefits of a riverfront trail and the commuter benefits of one in the right of way. And so just trying to balance those different user types and what function that shared use path is without having to have, two shared use paths that are 100 feet apart.
Great, thanks. Ben Weiss.
Thanks, Jeremy. I just wanted to speak to that also. We had that conversation kind of among the technical group. And one of the things that's just so up in the air, and we know that the right of way or the space, the feasibility of getting that riverfront path is very questionable in places like where the Holiday Inn backs right up to the riverbank. And so the thought was we need to be showing it here, and Parks is committed to working towards the riverfront path as well, but we needed to show it here because this plan is moving forward first. And so we don't know when a project is going to happen, but we wanted to show it on a plan because of so many unknowns about the riverfront that we didn't want it to we thought that it might disappear entirely if we said, oh, it's just going to go to the riverfront.
Okay, I have just one more question. I'm not seeing any other hands. So it looked like early on that Mount Jumbo path idea was a popular choice, but it didn't make it into the preferred alternative. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think where we decided to go to the railroad underpass is we felt like that was really the best solution. And while this might work, it just wasn't really meeting our goals of providing that connectivity in the way that we wanted. And so that was really where I think we started leaning towards the railroad underpass. And beyond that, the Mount Jumbo, this path, there's definitely some feasibility concerns with it as well. And so I think basically, if both the railroad underpass and the Mount Jumbo path have feasibility issues. But if you kind of look at those as equals, then the railroad underpass is actually the better solution. And so that was kind of how that decision was made.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea I hadn't thought about, but I see that a path on the north side of the interstate there doesn't serve a lot of the people that live either off of Easy Street or along Highway 200 as you get further to the west. So having the path on Highway 200 would be accessible to more people. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other hands. Thanks for that presentation. Great information. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to our final agenda item.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. And our last agenda item is a presentation on the 2020 Pavement Condition Assessment Survey and Report. David Gray and Aaron Wilson.
Yeah, all right. So let me share my screen here. We're going to kind of tag team this presentation a little bit, and just by way of a quick introduction, we're trying to wrap this project up that started seems like forever ago. It just for a variety of reasons, one of which being COVID and the challenges that it presents on all of our projects, but there were some timing and weather issues as well that compounded that. But I think now we're at a point where we're ready to be pretty much wrapped up with this, and we got some good data and results out of it. So just kind of walking us back, the MPO funded this study to help get us a baseline, a good baseline of pavement condition, MPO wide, and we partnered with the city and the county, and the county was able to add a little bit to that contract and get all of the county roads as well. So now we have a really good baseline inventory of pavement condition throughout the whole county. And so this is going to be really helpful for us moving forward in terms of planning, reporting on our pavement performance measures, and Dave will talk about some of that. And then thinking about our maintenance budgets and what that means for our pavement condition moving forward. So getting the data was really the first step in what's likely to be a years long or continuing process. And so excited to have this more or less wrapping up on our end. So with that, we'll move in, and I'll hand it over to Dave to talk a little bit about what we were hoping to do with this project. If you're still there, Dave.
I am here. All right. So Dave Gray, Transportation Plan with the MPO. We started this project to coordinate the pavement condition indices between MDT and the city and the county, because historically they have been competing, where MDT uses one set of metrics and then the city and the county have a different one. And every time we went to develop the long range plan, we had to figure out how to make those things fit. So we moved forward with having Transmap run their imaging and LiDAR so that we could get a consistent measure across the board, because one of the federal performance measures that we're required to address is pavement. So we included the city and the county. We did a city assessment and then a county assessment, and then we did an urbanized area summary report. So we have three different levels of reporting. So the city can justify their budget, the county can justify their budget, and if the MPO can come into play with any kind of federal funds, then we can help with some of that as well. We'll move on, I think, Aaron. You want me to go into the online map real quick? You're muted.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to show I think the online map will show a better illustration of what data we have and the scale.
All right, so I'll go into the online map that we have for the data that we've received from them, and I'm going to start in tight and then I'll zoom back out because my kids are online learning and my bandwidth is pretty wonky right now. So what we're looking at right here is the pavement condition index that was come up with by looking at a number of these other conditions for the pavement, like alligator cracking, heaving, slope of the road, rutting, that kind of thing. So all of those come into play when calculating the pavement condition index. So I've chosen a section on South 5th Street West between Grant and Johnson, and the PCI is 6. So that takes us down to failed, right? So the types of data that were gathered included imagery like street view, and I'll show you that in a second, LiDAR, and then accelerometer, which is, you know, how rough the road is. So when we go into one of these segments, we also have all these little dots, which are the street view imaging that the truck captured as it drove down the street. For this particular segment, this is what that failed pavement looks like. Does that make sense to everybody? If there are any questions, please let me know. So we can look all over, and this is the equipment, of course, and we can move down through like the entire road by using these controls, and that's what they've captured. And this will be out online soon when we're working with Lee and GIS to end with Public Works and Streets to make sure that they have this data. But the imagery, probably the street view part, probably will not be made public, because unlike Google, we can't fuzz out personally identifiable information like license plates and people's faces and what they're doing in their yard and that kind of thing. So the coverage extends well past the MPO urbanized area out to Sealy, Potomac, out here. So the county captured a lot of stuff that was outside of the urbanized area, and it has all the same data as what we captured interior. So we can use that for a variety of different purposes. And with the LiDAR data, is there a slide for the other opportunities, Aaron?
Yep.
The inventories.
Can you see that?
Yeah, there we go. So the LiDAR data offers opportunity for a number of different inventories that we did not pay for, but at the same time, the data is still there if someone wants to pursue them. So the LiDAR can identify signs. It can look at street paint conditions, storm drains, manholes, all of that, curb, gutter, sidewalk, even with on-street parking. Because of the frequency of the imagery, it can see pretty much around the car. So our utility for this thing was for pavement condition, but with the street view imagery, we can look at site obstruction. I use it for for the community transportation safety plan. We can open it up and we can look at the intersections if there's something that needs to be addressed. So we can use it for site obstruction, theoretically zoning enforcement, and a number of other things. So it's more than just pavement that we gathered, and the potential for additional data gathering or analysis is also there.
Great, thanks. And so the other piece of this, in addition to the data and how it's can be used by the MPO for our performance measures and reporting, it also gives us the baseline and the tools that we need to really start looking at a pavement asset management plan or pavement management system. And using that PCI and the pavement condition that was collected and modeling through software like MicroPaver, we can have a more data-driven approach to our pavement maintenance program and get additional data in terms of how effective are we going to be, where is our highest payoff investments in maintenance, so that we are essentially preventing streets from going into these lower PCI ranges where we might have to switch from a basic maintenance to more of a reconstruction or more expensive maintenance treatments. And so this data collection gives us that baseline, and we paid for some initial reports that went along with this that outline how that works and what those initial recommendations are, and gave us some scenarios in terms of budgeting and forecasts of where we might be in 5 years, given a couple of different funding options. So again, for planning purposes, this will be really, really useful. So the asset management tools primarily rely on a software called MicroPaver, or that's what we were using. It's a model. It takes a variety of different inputs, like the road classification. So is it a local street, a collector, arterial? It has different deterioration models or performance models. So looking at what happens to that pavement over time if we don't do anything to it. It looks at the current PCI and sort of places each road segment along that curve of where it's headed in terms of condition. And then we input things like maintenance costs. How much does it cost to do chip seal or mill and overlay or reconstruction? So then that software can looking out 5 years, how fast are different streets degrading, and when do they pass over that threshold of something like a chip seal and into a more substantial maintenance. And then we can look at budgets and project out what that means in terms of our deferred maintenance or our future PCI under a couple of different scenarios. So again, we can estimate the total cost for maintenance. So I think one of the useful numbers is what would it take to bring all of our streets up to essentially a good repair PCI. And so sort of that's our maintenance need that we're looking at in all of these scenarios. And we can do that by different types of streets, like functional classification. And we can see as you get further down in these PCIs, the cost to maintain that gets substantially higher. Like, for example, keeping the high PCI streets maintained, there's a lot more of those, but the cost is much lower than the smaller number of miles of critical or reclamation. So essentially the reconstructions. And then we can look at that, again, looking at our current budget. So within the urbanized area between the city and the county, that estimated budget, this is the projection for what our overall road condition for arterials and collectors is, sort of an example of what comes out of that report. So we can see that as we move over the next 4 to 5 years with our current budget and the costs that we're estimating, our PCI is going to be going down. And so we don't have sufficient budget to maintain those roadways at their current condition. And then we can look at a variety of different scenarios. So what would it cost to maintain that PCI at its current rate? What would it cost to maintain a target PCI, say of 71, which is a reasonably good road, or you're at least in that condition where those cheaper maintenance options are still viable. And then what happens if we do nothing? So over 5 years, if we don't spend any money on maintenance, what happens to our roadways, just to get a sense of sort of the do nothing approach. So there are a couple of, there's a lot of data in those reports. There's a couple of key takeaways that I think we're learning as we've gone through this. One, the biggest, is that our current budgets aren't keeping up with the need, that we have more roadways and more maintenance needs than we're able to repair with our current maintenance budgets for both the city and the county. But that said, looking at these models, we think we need more data or more time to evaluate the accuracy of those performance models that they've created for us. So getting a better projection of where we'll be at under different budget scenarios in the future. And so that leads us to think that this report and this data collection is really just the baseline. So we're getting this started. We don't have a whole lot of data to track how our roads deteriorate over time, or what lifespan our maintenance activities get out of it. And so this is just the first step. We need to do this again in 3 or 4 years or every couple of years so that we can evaluate what investments we've made, how that's impacted our overall pavement condition, and how quickly are our streets deteriorating and under different conditions. So as we move forward over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll just get better data and we'll get better models. We also know that this is just one tool in setting up our pavement programs. So there are a whole host of other factors that we need to weigh, such as utility projects. Where are those happening? Where are road construction projects happening? You can't just put together a half block of chip seal. You need multiple block projects to be cost effective, and the software doesn't really look at it that way. It looks at if you treat each segment in a different way, or what are the highest priority segments to treat, and then from that we can essentially put together work plans that hopefully will have a higher return on our investment. And so there's a whole host of factors that go into that, but this gives us the underlying data that we need to make sure we're making better investment or the right investments in maintaining our pavement, so that we're not seeing streets go into those lower PCIs where we might have to do a reconstruction. We can also shift, utility projects, especially at the city when we have water main replacements, knowing that, one water main may be the same benefit to this water system as another, but the overlying pavement may be much worse under one project. And so you can prioritize the utility projects to maximize our pavement condition, if that makes sense. So it is a really helpful tool in terms of planning for all of our maintenance activities and utilities. So that's kind of where we're at. Like Dave presented, we've got a lot of data that we can use in a variety of different places. We have these initial reports that are sort of telling us what our projections might be. And then we have essentially a plan in place to make sure we're doing this consistently through the future so we can get better projections moving forward. So that's where we're at with this project. Hopefully that kind of wraps it up. There's still a lot of work to do, but I think from the MPO side, we're more or less done with our role in this. And so now it's sort of on to the city and the county, and maybe some additional work and recommendations coming out of the long-range transportation plan on how we can be more effective in our pavement maintenance. Any questions on that from the committee?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. From a public works standpoint, this has produced a lot of really good data for us to use, and will be helpful going forward. Ben Weiss.
Thanks. That was a ton of good information. I was really interested in the slide that showed kind of what our current funding level will do and then the different funding levels to bring things up. But I noticed that was only arterials. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was just an illustration. We have the same data for local streets as well. And so the one piece of this, we only did the data collection for the non-MDT route. MDT has their own pavement assessment program. And so the idea, as Dave mentioned, is to get consistent. And so the MDT routes, we have MDT's data to look at that. They're developing their own maintenance program. And this gives us a sense of where our local streets are, both the local and arterial collectors.
Interesting. I didn't know that we had local owned arterials, I guess.
I don't think there's much on the arterial. It's probably that it's just the way those reports lumps arterials and collectors together.
Oh, all right. So that, I dug through the report and found the local slide, and the amount of money there is staggering. It's like 10 million annually needs to be spent to even just keep them from backsliding a ton. So I guess without putting Brian and Jeremy too much on the spot, is there are we going to have to think about like selectively allowing certain streets to degrade so that we can keep others at functional levels?
Well, it becomes a level of service question. What level of service do you want for your streets? At the current funding levels, we are going to see that level of service degrade. If city council wants to maintain that or see it be better, we're going to have to find more money for that.
Yeah, and I do want to reiterate too that this is the first baseline, and so because we don't have 5 or 10 years worth of local data on how our roads are deteriorating and how different maintenance treatments extend the life of roads, we don't know exactly how accurate those models are for Missoula. And so it may be that those projections are overestimating the costs necessary to do that because we're able to do more, either do more for less, or our roads aren't deteriorating at the rate that they're projecting, or there's a whole host of factors that as we do this over the next 4 or 5 or 10 years, we'll get much better projections, and those numbers will hopefully get closer together.
Yeah, Brian, I see you've got your mic unmuted. Do you want to weigh in?
I was just going to mention exactly what Aaron said, and that hopefully we can get funding to do the pavement assessment survey again in 5 years, I'm guessing, which will give us a much better idea of what our actual deterioration model is. But it's a projection.
Yeah, this is a better tool than we've ever had before. So, we'll continue to develop the tool. It's a tool. It isn't how we make all of our decisions, but it will be useful data to have and provide more of a data-driven approach for our discussions about funding. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. Thanks for that presentation. Great information. That is all of the items on our new business agenda. We don't have anything on the old business agenda. So we are now at the point of announcements and closing comments. Anything else from the committee?
I've got a couple of quick announcements that maybe folks are aware of or not. One is that we have hired a new planner who will be to replace Tara. We're sad to see her go, but we've got I think a good candidate who's going to help us out, and he's starting on the 16th. So in about, I guess that's 2 weeks or a week and a half away. We'll have him on board, and so by December we'll be able to introduce you to Charlie when he's up and running. And then the other announcement I have is that folks may be aware now that there's been some realignment at the city, and the MPO staff and the transportation division has joined a new infrastructure and mobility division within Public Works. And so I don't know, I'm excited about the opportunity to integrate all of our transportation pieces at the city and mobility integrated a little bit more fully, including being able to work closer with Brian and his crews on the maintenance. We talked a little bit about that in the East Missoula corridor, that as we bring these plans forward, thinking about things like maintenance or how our pavement funding works within all of our other planning, and doing a better job integrating basically from plans and policies all the way down through maintenance, construction, maintenance, and implementation. And so I think it'll be an exciting opportunity. It will mean some updates to our MPO agreements, and so those will be coming through over the next couple of months. We'll be working on that, but that's largely administrative at this point. But the big change is that the MPO will move from development services into the new infrastructure and mobility department. Jeremy, do you have anything to add on that?
No, just it's a change that we're making that kind of formalizes things we've been doing informally for a long time, and I think it really gives us some great capabilities, brings together some great talented staff, and should improve our efficiencies in the way we implement our projects. And for MPO staff, there's really very little change in terms of our work plan, still going through TTAC and TPCC, and so the MPO still will function in the same way that it always has, but hopefully it gives us a little bit more insight into some of those other aspects, and transportation in general being a little bit more mission driven in the work that we do, and being able to help other sections or departments focus on those missions as well.
Speaking of that, I think it's important that we keep the land use connection. And so we have, I would encourage us to maintain a member from whatever the new Development Services Department is called. And I noticed that Don was called out on the attendance sheet. And so we probably need to update the rosters for this and think about including Aaron or whoever, someone else from whatever that department's called.
Yep, we'll still have a seat. It'll likely be the director still. It'll be Erin, and then she can decide who on her, if she needs to attend or if staff, someone like Laval is a better sort of month-to-month proxy for that seat. So
yeah, thanks, Ben. I made a note of that too. I think that's really important that we keep somebody in the land use planning world involved in this committee. Okay. Seeing no other comments or hands up, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for your time today. Appreciate all of the good information, good discussion.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.